Your son is about to make a huge mistake.
I'm gonna be a priest.
For Halloween.
I'm praying for you, Bill.
Don't you dare! You're violating my rights!
There's a man going around taking names.
We've all been wrong, and we've all done some wrong.
But he came to forgive us.
Everybody won't be treated all the same.
There's no easy way to deliver this news. You have a progressive muscle disorder. The muscles weaken until they cease to function.
Is there anything it doesn't mess with?
Yeah, erectile function.
I'm trying to be a priest, pal.
This is Criteria. Hey there, everyone. Welcome back to Criteria, the Catholic Film Podcast. I'm James Majewski here with my co-host, Thomas V. Maris. Hey, Thomas.
Hey.
And we've got a short but sweet episode for you today. We're going to be previewing/reviewing, talking about the upcoming film from Sony Pictures, Father Stu, starring Mark Wahlberg and Mel Gibson, and about the true life story of Father Stuart Long, the sort of rough and wayward boxer turned Catholic priest. We got to see an advanced screening of this. Thomas, you actually got to go somewhere here in New York City to watch this film, right? How was that?
Yeah, like a month ago, there was a screening in New York City, and so I went to see that in the theater, which was cool. I mean, it was pretty. There were a lot of people there at this screening. Probably a mix of press and people who, their priest got a link and brought a group of people, got an invitation and brought a group of people.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it goes without saying when it's Sony Pictures and it's Mark Wahlberg and it's Mel Gibson, we're talking about an A-list film. This isn't just some sort of indie feature.
Right. Yeah, it's kind of shot like an indie feature, but I'm guessing the budget was quite small.
Right.
I don't know, but it's got this wider release. Yeah. So yeah, Mark Wahlberg, this is his idea, I think, to make a movie about this priest. I don't know if he had actually met him at some point before he died. This priest died in 2014, I think at the age of 50. But he wanted to make a movie about him. And I read on Wikipedia that originally back in like 2016, he announced this as a project he was going to be working on with David O. Russell as the screenwriter, which is interesting. David O. Russell did like American Hustle, Silver Linings Playbook, movies like that. So it ended up being not with David O. Russell, but it ended up being with writer and director Rosalind Ross. And this is her directorial debut of a feature, I should say. I think she's maybe done some TV work. But yeah, so where do we start? Should we just get, talk about the sort of the ethos of this? I mean, it's this is an R-rated movie. This is a faith-based movie, that's rated R, which I don't know how often, if ever, you see that, right?
Right.
But they're clearly going for, the way I'd put it is like, this is a movie made by rough around the edges people for rough around the edges people,
Yeah.
I think clearly they weren't trying to get a family audience. This is not a family movie. Or probably parents should resist the temptation to see it as a family movie.
Yeah.
It certainly in terms of the language,
which really is like the main thing. There are some adult themes, but you don't really get any, sex on screen or too much violence beyond, the violence that comes with him being a boxer.
Right.
But
that's right. Yeah, it's the language and some of the things said.
Right.
So they're clearly going, I think their intention is to go for, and I think Mark Wahlberg has said this, is that they're hoping people who are kind of like, this Stuart Long character who can relate to him will be reached by this film.
Which is interesting, because for all of that, it still does have some of the more, how do I put it, like Hallmark movie-esque types. This isn't necessarily a criticism. What I mean is that it's not tonally one-sided in the way that you might think by saying, oh yeah, this is an R-rated faith film. Like, it still has some of the stuff that you come to expect from Christian movies. So
you wouldn't really describe this movie as gritty.
No.
Even though it doesn't pull back from harsh language and stuff, and the guy getting, these boxing sequences, or he's, people are beating the crud out of each other. Like, it's not really gritty because it's played in a way that is pretty light and comedic a lot of the time. Not the boxing sequences in particular, but there's something. I've never seen a Hallmark movie, so I can't comment on that specifically. But there's something, I don't know. How would you describe the way they it is gritty, but somehow it doesn't feel like, Taxi Driver or something. I don't know.
I don't know. I think that perhaps it might be as simple as saying that the film has a very doggedly hopeful way of looking at all of its circumstances.
Okay. Yeah.
So even when things are really bad, and probably they get the worst between Mark Wahlberg and Mel Gibson's characters, and we can maybe talk about that a bit, because that's pretty much the central relationship in the film. But
right.
But yeah, probably the things get their worst in the interactions between these two characters, and yet all the while you can see, the love, the real love that exists beneath these interactions and this really broken father-son relationship. And then also the humor. The film opens with this just amazing little prelude sequence with a young Stuart Long dancing in his socks and in his underwear to an Elvis song, and Mel Gibson, his father,
singing along. Yeah.
Sorry, was that?
And he's singing badly,
Yeah. And Mel Gibson, as the father, is just sitting in his armchair, smoking a cigarette, clearly drinking, probably already drunk, and after some moments just says some sort of really caustic, biting remark that somehow manages to be hilarious and distressing all at once.
Right.
I laughed out loud when I saw it, and that was probably equally due to the fact that I love Mel Gibson, and it was just such a delight to see him just yet again killing it as a different character. And he does a particularly good job, I think, with these kind of really broken father figure types.
Right.
Probably because
we talked about that when we reviewed Fat Man.
Yeah. But also I think, I laughed because it was just kind of something about the way that it was handled was just funny, oh my gosh, this guy is such a bad father. It's laughable. It's dark. It deals with some heavy themes, but it's not gritty. It's definitely not despairing. And there's a light touch throughout the film. Yeah.
That you said you laughed at that, and that's interesting because, especially when I saw this movie in the theater with a bunch of people, there's moments in this film where people laugh. You're in the theater, people laugh, and you're like, I'm not sure you should laugh at that. So much of the film is handled with this witty dialogue and stuff that there's moments, or there's irreverent moments where what are people laughing at? And sometimes I'm not sure what it is that they're laughing at, in the scenes where he's in the confessional and cussing at the priest early on after he gets baptized, and some of the things that there's a line that his mom says that it's very, very it's blasphemous, but and clearly she's supposed to be just totally clueless, but people laugh, and it's what exactly are you laughing at? I'm not sure. And so there's something I'm not sure about in the way this film approaches its irreverence. It's not that it, for the most part, it's irreverent. The film itself is irreverent, but in the way that it displays characters being irreverent with a comedic touch, that like I'm just not sure what people are laughing at when they're laughing at. I mean, I laughed at plenty of things too.
Sure.
Like it's a funny movie, you know. But that is a big part of the tone. And I think it's in the film's favor in some respects, and then I think other times I think that the film is a bit overwritten.
Sure.
Maybe.
Sure.
Like what I would say about this film is like the core of it is like a really good story, and it's a story that's skillfully told, you know, and movingly told, and the really serious moments really land too.
Yeah, definitely, definitely.
But you know, there's this like there's times when everybody's just a bit too fast talking and clever, and that sometimes you see this with like, you know, inexperienced writers where it's almost like, I don't want to say like sitcom dialogue, but everybody's just a little too smart.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Totally.
And everybody has like the right smart, clever retort at the right time. And I wouldn't say that it like mostly in this, sometimes that can have the effect of like really detracting from like the emotional effect of scenes. I don't think that's really the case so much in this movie, but I think that there's scenes that could have had a little bit more reality.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that it detracts from like the serious moments, like we've talked about when you discuss The Chosen, where sometimes they'll throw in a joke in there and it like undermines the serious moments. I don't think that's what's happening in this film. I just think that sometimes it could use a little bit more like emotional, like breathing room because it's so there's so much writing, you know, in the dialogue.
Yeah.
Does
I
that make
think
sense?
that totally. I think that the one place where that probably is least felt, or where the writing is most successful, is again in this relationship between Father Stuart and his father, between Mark Wahlberg and Mel Gibson's characters. And I think that's probably for a few reasons. I think one of them is that they are the central characters, and so they're given perhaps like the most sort of fleshed out you know, perspectives throughout the film. Some of the other characters that exist on the outside operate a little more like stock characters. I'm thinking in particular of like some of the friends that he makes along the way, the sort of...
The seminarian is the word, the snobby seminarian is the worst example of this.
Yeah, exactly.
He's the only character that I like really can't accept because he's so one note until the end.
Right.
And he speaks in a way that nobody, even like the snobbiest person, doesn't actually speak like that.
And even when he does have his change towards the end, you know, it's been telegraphed to you a mile away that that's what's coming, you know? So that's probably my one knock against the film. And you know, we're leading this with some criticisms, I guess mostly because like this is a big enough movie that it can handle it, and I have plenty of...
Well, we're talking about the tone. I wasn't necessarily planning on bringing this stuff early, but it makes sense because this is such a tone-driven movie.
Totally.
You know, that like I think it makes sense to talk about all the different aspects of it. You were talking about the characters. I was thinking about this last night, like the girlfriend is... A lot of the characters are very character-y, if that makes sense. Like this seminarian, like the girlfriend, she is kind of like the quintessential like semi-devout like Latina girlfriend character.
And so
that's
it's related. Well, no, but
maybe I just made that up.
It's related to what you're saying here about the writing. So I think our criticisms are kind of landing in the same space. But I keep going back to the relationship between Mel Gibson and Mark Wahlberg's characters, because I feel like that is rich enough that these other sort of slight criticisms that I have are easily overlooked. So not only are these characters of the father of Stuart Long and then Stuart Long himself more fleshed out, but the performances that we get from these two actors, from Mark Wahlberg and Mel Gibson, are just incredible. I think Mark Wahlberg does as good a turn as any in this role. I mean, I think like frankly, this is like an Oscar-worthy performance. I don't know that it'll get any nomination like that, but you can really tell that Mark Wahlberg came at this with the sort of seriousness and dedication that that you would expect to see from an A-list actor in a biopic.
Like he gained 30 pounds, all the stuff that people say about big Oscar.
Right.
He gained 30 pounds.
No, but he
for the
also
role,
did a really, really good job throughout playing these different stages in Father Stewart's life. I want to talk more about that, but I also want to mention Mel Gibson just being really, really good. I felt like did a really great job from the beginning of holding these two realities together of a father who loves his son and a father who is just terrible to his son, Right. And so there's no moment really where you don't see the brokenness in this father, so that there's a real, there's like a depth to this relationship that goes beyond just, antagonism.
Right.
But then also, we were talking about the writing and the film feeling overwritten. I think it really works between these two characters because they're blue collar. They're the kind of guys who rib on one another in order to show affection. And right. You can tell that they're skilled in this kind of right. back and forth. So it's totally believable.
Exactly. You buy the fact that these are character traits that they have, that they are both ready-witted people mm-hmm. and fast talkers and maybe even charmers in some way and smooth talkers when they right. when they want to be. Right. And whereas some of the other characters, it feels like, oh, that's just the writing.
Yeah. Yeah, so
film,
when Mel Gibson and Mark Wahlberg are getting together and they're having this this verbal sparring going on, it doesn't require any suspension of disbelief for me. In fact, it's like lightning. Yes. It's firecrackers. Like I'm totally delighted watching this. And frankly, when the movie was done, I was like, man, I could have just watched an entire movie with just those two actors doing right. their thing together. They both play this like rough kind of gritty character really, really well, with simultaneous warmth and humor. It's just totally awesome. But right. then, like when Mark Wahlberg's character meets the semi-devout Latina girlfriend for the first time.
That's an archetype I just totally made up.
Yeah.
I think.
It does kind of require a bit of suspension of disbelief. It's a little too on the nose, the back and forth and the flirting.
Right. I mean, it's played for laughs too, but yeah. The you know what? I just want to give a shout out to the actor who plays Ham, who is my other favorite character in this film. I like Ham because he's not just like constantly with the witty remarks. I mean, he is witty. But he feels like one of the more real characters to me. I don't know, maybe it's just me. But
this is another young man at the parish where Father Stewart is first baptized and then
ends up becoming one of his fellow seminarians. Yeah. And so Ham, especially the scene that there's some good quieter moments between them, and especially the scene where they're in the car together mm-hmm. after Stu gets this bad diagnosis that he gets later in the film. Mm-hmm. And there's just some good, this character is good at conveying things without speaking. This actor, Aaron Moten, who played this character. And I just thought it was a nice performance by him that both times I watched the movie stood out to me as like one of the more, one of the characters I enjoyed watching most, I think, and they conveyed that like seminary brotherhood
for sure
very well.
Yeah, another supporting actor who does a really good job is the woman who plays Father Stu's mother.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've seen her before.
Yeah, she's a well-known actress. What's her name? Jackie Weaver. So a lot of really good performances all around. But Mark Wahlberg really takes the cake, I think. One of the things that I so appreciated about his performance, but also about the film, is that while it definitely revels in the sort of the rough origins of Father Stu in his younger years, and some of these more unsavory parts of his life, it doesn't stay there. And I think that I was really relieved that it didn't, that it actually reached a place of what I thought was some real spiritual maturity by the end of the film. Because I think that there's a tendency for all of us, especially those of us who have experienced a sort of conversion or reversion, to at the beginning still be clinging to to the old man. There's a kind of pride of, well, I've been places and I've seen things, and
Right.
and that's ultimately something that you have to move beyond. You have to mature out of, because there's no room to be proud of your sins. It's just
right. And Catholic and Christians who love a conversion story tend to, be easily sort of like overly like enchanted with these kinds of
right.
things.
And listen, this film knows what it's about. Like, it knows that is part of the interest of the human interest of the story of this priest. So we go there, and there are moments where it pays off, like when they go to when as a seminarian he goes to this like medium security prison, and is like so much better equipped to talk with the inmates there because of his past. But then eventually it moves past that, and we see this priest, this seminarian, become a priest and become a man of true humility, who's spending a lot of time in the confessional, who is a witness to the dignity of suffering, the value of suffering, the gift of suffering, he says, and so these are things that go beyond the sort of initial flash and sort of pseudo glamour of some sinner turned priest, right?
Right.
And so not only does the film do that well, but Mark Wahlberg's performance does that really well. I think you really see a change in this character that goes beyond.
Well, look at the sermon that he gives at the end at his ordination, and compare that to the perfectly good, reflection that he gives when he's a seminarian invited to give a reflection at his parish. I mean, the tone of the two are very different. I mean, they're both good.
Yes.
But there's like a greater weight and a greater like sobriety and everything to the sermon that he gives when he's
So the change goes beyond just shaving the mustache and combing his hair, and it goes beyond gaining 30 pounds rendering in his body this muscular degenerative disorder that affected Father Stuart, and it goes to something interior. He's still the same man, but there you can see the interior change performed by Mark Wahlberg, and part of it too is a peace that you begin to sense from this character that isn't present at the beginning. A lot of the film sort of shows Stu moving from one pursuit to the next. He's just sort of like an all or nothing kind of guy. And so he's really hitting the boxing, and then he's really pursuing this acting career, and then he's really pursuing this woman that he's interested in. And then, he's really pursuing the priesthood. And eventually you really get the sense of a shift inside of him after his diagnosis toward something much more peaceful, something much more at rest, and so there's all sorts of incredible moments that were given with this character that could have otherwise been really cheesy or really poorly done. There's one moment where in kind of like a really desperate moment in Stu's life, he goes to the church at night and crawls on his, just not even just on his hands and knees, but like totally prostrate on the floor, crawls to this statue of the Blessed Mother. And I was thinking how remarkable it was that this film was able to render that in a way that was gripping and dramatically effective and spiritually real, and not kind of campy or something, which it easily could have been with a less skilled representation, right? So I think that the performances that are given first by Mark Wahlberg, but then also importantly by Mel Gibson, because that relationship ends up at the end of the film coming in to be really the most important relationship, even if it isn't given a whole lot of time during the middle portions of the film. I think these performances are really what hold it all together, you know?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. The film has a very strong core, whatever, like, stylistic blemishes it might have. I think that everything sort of comes through regardless. And even if there are parts that are overwritten, it doesn't ultimately heavily detract.
Another thing that I'll say in praise of this film is that in general it seems pretty theologically precise. I think that sometimes with Christian films there can be a little bit of I don't know if that's quite hitting the mark theologically, but here I didn't really get too many instances of that where something was
there was only one instance for me.
I'll tell you the instance for me. There was only one instance for me, and it was when after seminarian Stu finds out that he's no longer going to be allowed to continue as a seminarian, he goes to his rector and says something to the effect of, "We're not human beings living a spiritual experience. We're spiritual beings with a human experience," or something.
Yeah, that's like a quote from somebody in real life. I forget who.
But that was the one thing that rang a little false for me. Like, okay, I see what you're saying there, but that's not really what we think as Catholics.
That's not really how the priesthood works.
But what was your moment?
Oh, well, that was it. But there's one other, but it wasn't theological per se. But yeah, there's a couple of weird moments, like there's a scene where he's in a bar. This is right before he gets into like a really bad motorcycle accident. And this guy starts talking to him in a way that it's like, this is clearly supposed to be Jesus, like disguised as like a really like craggly, biker dude or something. But he like uses like a vulgarity that like I wish they hadn't put in Jesus's mouth.
Oh, right.
Remember?
Yeah.
And like the point is like sound theologically, but like the way the language is it's not reverent.
Yeah, that's right. That's a good point.
And then there's another thing. There's only one other thing, which is this moment where after he gets his diagnosis, his ex-girlfriend has come to talk to him, and they're like joking around, and he like grabs her butt. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
I like wasn't sure if I was like seeing it properly at first, but then I like watched it again. I was like, I think that's like, it's clearly he's joking because he's like, yeah, I'm like crippled now and like being silly, but like it's totally weird and like doesn't land.
Yeah.
So there's a couple moments where like either in one case it's a joke that ends up being like, oh, that's kind of inappropriate, like, and then in another case there's like a moment that's supposed to be, I don't think really humorous, but it's supposed to be like Jesus being real with Stu, but it ends up just being irreverent.
Yep.
And medium. Yeah. So.
Yeah.
So,
but given all of the places that this film goes to and all of the things that it says, I think that, that's doing pretty all right.
Yeah. And it's interesting because this film is made by, it does pretty well considering the film is made by, well, I don't know what the religious background of the writer and director Rosalind Ross is, but Mark Wahlberg and Mel Gibson are known as Catholics, but like they're kind of like, they're not exactly Catholics in good standing,
Yeah.
Like Wahlberg, I think a lot of people think he is, but he supports gay marriage, he seems like sincere. He seems like he prays a lot and, focuses on his family and stuff. So he may just not be well formed. He may just not be well catechized, but then Gibson is like a member of like a Sedevacantists, sect
Yeah.
of some kind. He like founded a chapel that's not in communion with the Archdiocese of LA,
gee.
Out there. And
Yeah, it's sad because we've just talked on the podcast about some pretty great Catholic actors and actresses from decades past, and you wish that like the poster Catholic actors of our day would maybe be doing a little bit better of a job witnessing to the faith in their lives. But I think that, we can still be really grateful for this film, grateful for the work that they're doing in Hollywood. And then, praying for them, definitely.
right.
If this is the kind of...
Well, I was just reading the other day that I think it was who's the famous couple, Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton.
Yeah.
This famous Hollywood couple, and it was like infidelity and stuff. And apparently the Pope at the time, whoever that was, like publicly condemned it.
Wow. Wow.
But like, we don't have any of that from the church. Like, we're just desperate for anybody to like give us some FaceTime, and so like, the director and writer of this film is Mel Gibson's 35 years younger mistress. They got together when she was 24. Now she's 30. He's 65. They have a kid together, and they made this nice, Catholic movie, and that's great. And I hope that bodes well for both of them, but it's just, there's no like, the standard couldn't be more different from like 60, 70 years ago, where the church would have like been like taking a firm hand and like making sure that Catholic actors and actors in general, not just Catholic actors either, just like making sure that they like, at least in public, toed a line and like set a good example,
Right.
So I don't know what to, where to go with that.
It's very strange, very, very confusing.
It's an observation.
Yeah. Oh, one last thing I'll say is that the voice work was pretty good, I thought.
Voice work?
Yeah, in terms of the work that all the actors had done on the dialect. Where is Father Stu from? Do you remember?
I don't know. Somewhere in the South?
Yeah, it's
So you thought he had a good accent, Mark Wahlberg?
Yes, I thought he did. I thought that Mel Gibson did the best job because he was the clearest. So I could still understand what he was saying. So not only was he rendering the dialect effectively, but I could still understand what Mel Gibson was saying. There
were several moments where I couldn't understand Mark Wahlberg because he talks really fast in this mumbled Southern accent.
Yeah.
Most of the time I could, and I didn't miss anything important, I think. But
yeah, so like we talk about a Southern accent, but there really is no Southern accent. It's a lot of different dialects, and people from Georgia sound a lot different. Much more different from people in Texas or in Louisiana, or the dialect work was really convincingly done because it didn't sound like a generalized Southern accent. It sounded really specific, sounded very believable, sounded very cohesive across the
he's from Montana.
Yeah, there you go. So it's not even Southern, it's a
okay, so he sounds Southern.
Well, he sounds like he's from Montana.
Okay. Well, the film is going to be out on Holy Wednesday or Spy Wednesday, April 13th. Yeah, I think it's worth seeing, but it's just, you have to keep in mind, it's not a family film. Yeah. And so you can't expect that of it, I would say it's like a very accessible film, but in its content, it's not a family film.
Mm-hmm. So that's it. That's our review of Father Stu. I think that this will be the last episode that we release in Lent before Easter, most likely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
So everybody have a very blessed Easter. Go see this movie. Don't bring your young children. And if you liked this video, be sure to hit subscribe. Head over to our website, catholicculture.org. You can check out any of our other podcasts or previous episodes of this one. And if you want to contribute to help us keep the lights on, keep on chugging, you can just go to www.catholicculture.org/donate/audio.